I'm Tobias from Astralis, and welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel. It's a choke-free zone.
Now, I haven't tried all the energy formulas and drinks out there in the world, just as all the great CSGO players that will ever play the game probably have not played it yet. But if I had to pick the greatest of all time, I think I'd probably go with Pyjamas. Unlike drinks that'll send you to the stars, but only for a bit and leave you burned out afterwards looking for alternatives, Pyjamas brings you up, helps you focus, and then gently tapers off your energy release. So if you're out there talking up some other brand, then wind your neck in, because that really gets my goat. Plus, get a much better discount than NiP did on device with my code Thorin, Thorin, at gamersups.gg. It goes down nice and smooth, so it's a choke-free zone. Now, device, the most decorated player in CSGO history, has left Astralis, arguably the greatest team in CSGO history, the greatest core in CSGO history. We all know the plaudits, etc. And he has joined NiP, Ninjas in Pyjamas, on a 3-year deal which reportedly costs something like 6.5 million Danish kroners, which is roughly $1 million US. Now, let's do the usual approach. And as a result, we'll save some of the drama till later in the video, but we'll get to that and the historical context, of course. So, in terms of Astralis' side of the equation, because they're the ones who had the choice here. Remember, Device is under contract. If they want to keep him, he has to stay, as Casper Hid went out of his way to point out in the HLTV article I noticed when he was talking about it. Because, you know what, narcissists always have to let you know that it was always their power, etc., etc., etc. So, should they have let Device go? Should they have let another team sign him? Yes and no. Like, yes, he obviously at the end of the year, I think the contract's assigned till December or something, could have just walked away for free at that point in time and you get absolutely nothing except more time with Device in your lineup. But at the moment, we don't know what that would even convert into. This way around, you maybe get $1 million. That's pretty good. I mean, supposedly the organisation needs money based on last year's behaviour, in case people aren't aware. The players wanted time off. They couldn't get the time off until some of them produced literal doctor's sick notes saying they had to have time off. There's other teams that have given players time off that didn't have to have that. Some of the players in the org, before even the drama people know in 2020 in CSGO, in League of Legends, players had already had to take a pay cut to get a player in that year in 2020 for the LCS team in Origin. And then the players in the CSGO team and the League of Legends team after that were asked to take pay cuts, 30% voluntary pay cut, to keep the org afloat. I even heard, in terms of the League of Legends side, that it was presented in a mad unprofessional manner where they were basically told before a playoff series, like, unless some of you guys take pay cuts, some people in this office just get fired. Like, they're going away. So this is mad. Then you consider they were also signing shit players, or at least I consider Yugi a shit player. In terms of Zyrathenia, not a shit player, but certainly not an Astralis caliber player. Bobski, not an Astralis caliber player. Not getting the big names from Danish CS, just getting these names. And then you look to this year, and they're now rebranded to Astralis League. Legends team. It was called Origin before, but they owned it. They have basically a budget roster. They haven't gone for any big names at all, and they just ended up with a budget roster. So the timing of hearing a few months ago about them inquiring about other players in the scene to potentially join the scene, I understood something like this could be in the pipeline. I suspected at least one player is leaving Astralis, if not the team's being rebuilt, maybe chopped in half, rebuilt entirely, who knows? Now, that's the most obvious side of it. Let's be real, in terms of what you're putting into the server, and I also say, by the way, if you're going to send him into a team, you're not sending him into a Danish team, so you're not making like Heroic the best Danish team forever. You're also kind of sending him out of the conference in terms of he's going to Sweden and to a team that's not a contender. So, you know what, it's better than it could have been. There's other destinations where it immediately comes back to bite you. But in terms of in the server, it's instantly going to bite you. This is an irreplaceable player, literally. Even if you could get Simple, Ziwu, Nico, it's still a loss. Because they don't speak Danish, they don't play in that style of team that Astralis has been with their success, and they haven't proven, by the way, that if they did play in that type of team, they would be able to do what a Device did. That's the interesting part about his career. For this team, he was the perfect player, hence all the success. Now, This is a guy, this is why he's irreplaceable, who has the GOAT resume, the best resume in the history of CSGO. He is a contender just straight up for the best player of all time, even on other factors, just off his play. But you look at his resume, this instantly puts him in the conversation. He has the most MVP awards in history from HLTV.org. By the way, just in Astralis alone, remember he played for many years before Copenhagen Wolves and Dignitas and TSM, when it was the same core under different names. Just under the Astralis brand, he has won 14 MVP awards. For context, just his awards in Astralis would make him second all-time in history. Actually, no, wait a second. I'll say it another way, because obviously it's total awards. If we ignore everything Device had done before he joined Astralis, he would still be the #1 player in terms of MVP awards from HLTV.org, because Simple would only be at 12, Zero at 11, some of those for Zero were online as well, and Device won 14 just in Astralis. So, by the way, that's also why it's so silly that people would do that nonsense angle of keeping saying, like, they're all just great players. Like, they can all win the MVP at any event. No, they can't all win the MVP at any event. Like, Device can win the MVP at any event if they win. But you know what? Otherwise, Zyrathenia is going to have to mad overperform. Glaive's going to have insane numbers. Like, Mega's going to have to dominate the whole event. Like, that's what's so silly about how people present their strats. And I suspect you're about to find out why that never was the case. That they were just 5 equally great players in terms of their impact in winning the game. So then let's add on there, oh, he's a 4-time major winner. Nobody's won more majors in history. Only some of his teammates have won as many. He's a 2-time major MVP winner from HLTV.org. Again, this is a record. No one's ever won more than 2. Obviously, Cold Zero won 2. You could even argue he should have been a 3-time if you think he should have won for the Atlanta major, the first major they won. I personally think so, but I understand why people were swayed by Kirby's final performance and Device's finals underperformance. By the way, 3 would also be a record, of course, but then he'd be a record on his own, right? He's won tons of other tournaments. And let's just throw it in there. He has had 6 years in which HLTV.org, at the end of the year, made him a top 5 ranked player for that year. And 6 years in a row. I did a whole video about this topic already. Then you can add in, with your eye test and looking at his overall form, arguably the most consistent player in CSGO history. People like Simple weren't in the teams to potentially do these things. Nico in the past. So as a result, he sort of wins that by default. The other greats, Get Right, all fell off. Overtime, Guardian, Kenny S, Shocks, pick who you want. Then you consider, you never heard anything publicly, and I quite frankly never really heard things privately about the idea he has a bad attitude, he causes issues. I've heard he's a little bit of a whiner, but you know what? Look at what a great player he is. A lot of great players get frustrated in the game when things don't go their way or a teammate doesn't do the things, and it was never on the level of a Simple. I mean, I won't even put the other names out there, but you can imagine some of the other people, Config, etc. Now, then you look at the eye test, he had an utterly unique AWPing style, which obviously Astralis lived and died off at times. His mobility with the AWP was peerless, quite frankly. Even the other great AWPers used to look and go, fucking hell, this guy just knows something about the AWP. We don't. The whole thing of him studying demos to figure out where he could put himself so people wouldn't expect, and where the opponent's going to be, infamously at PGL Krakow when he was just inside Fallen's brain, just reading every move he was going to do a second before he did it. I quite frankly think as an AWPer, a primary dedicated AWPer who's not going super close range like fucking Simple and just killing people with the AWP, but not traditionally as an AWPer, I think he had the perfect aggression level if you have the kind of team he did. If you have as good a team as he did and as good teammates who were as smart as his were and who could play all the roles you need, he had the most responsible AWPing style, I think, in the history of the game. There was never another player as good with the AWP and as good a player who had as responsible an AWPing style. Like, if you look at, as far as I can tell, they sometimes have to tell Zero what to do. Simple has to force the game and just break it wide open because he wouldn't be able to win the game if he played Device style. But if you had the perfect team around you, I think Device is the AWPer who would be the perfect AWPer for you. Hence why he's considered maybe the greatest player ever and in the greatest team of all time. It all adds together, right? Even if you think of all the issues that you had, if you're Astralis, you surely still give the lineup of 5 players that won 3 majors in a row and have yet to be displaced as the 3-time in a row reigning champions and 4-time overall with 4 of them. You don't just give them one more chance, not just at LAN, but at another major. Like for me, you say we play until the next major, assuming the contracts allow that. And then after that, we make our decision as to whether or not it can be revived or we have to go another way. I think you've earned that if you're on the level they're at. Not entirely, it is a sport, it is a business. But I think if you just consider what those players did, I give it another chance no matter what. I have to know whether they win or not if I'm Astralis. But obviously, they disagree in that sense. And by the way, I'll say this especially. Even if they were slumping now, What other all-time great team has come back as many times as these guys? As far as I'm concerned, they've done it more than Virtus Pro and to a better level than Virtus Pro. They've essentially done these crazy comebacks at least twice from the Blastralis through period. And you could even argue, like, if they'd have managed it again, I could see a world in which the third time was possible. I wouldn't bet on it. They were doing incredible stuff, but they earned the distinction that you have to at least consider it was possible. This is why practically nobody gets to write their own ticket to exit the game in sports or esports unless they retire while still in their prime. I mean, Tom Brady found that out. If you can't win that many championships and still have them bank on you and say, we won't go a different route, then bloody hell, what can you do at that point in time? Now, if you're Astralis, let's also be real. Of all the players you could lose, this one's the most important in terms of fragging, in terms of the skills in the game. I'll probably do a video soon looking at the balance of the team and who did what, etc. Like, listen, you could certainly argue Glaive is more important in terms of team impact and what he does to the opponent. But in terms of killing people in the server, Device was your guy. He was the main player. He was a part of the core, him, Dupree and Zipnik since 2013 with a small interruption. You can make a new core. Obviously, you can just say, well, Glaive, Dupree, Zipnix is the new core. Hey, it's a pretty nice one. They've got pretty good resumes. They've been great players in their respective roles. Problem is, where's the Device that played with those players that allowed those results to happen as the MVP of the team? You don't have him, right? So it's a great core, but it's kind of like Fnatic when they had to reinvent themselves years later without Olaf Meister. You've got to find someone else. Where's your Brolan to become your new Olaf, as it were? So I'm quite frankly, even though I'm sad to see this lineup dissolve and specifically Device leave the lineup, if it was up to me, it wouldn't happen beyond shit I know about the org. I do think when I look at them as a team, I'm very interested to see what this means for Glaive and the rest of his career. If he continues to play, and I certainly hope he does, let's test his greatness out. He's the greatest IGL of all time. Most people consider him that. I would probably give him the edge in that regard. So let's see what he does without his best ever player. Let's see what he does with some other talents, right? Let's see if he can get them back to the top. That's a pretty exciting prospect, right? I suspect, by the way, more changes are on the way for Astralis. As I have alluded to, there's times when they've been out there looking for other players, potentially. Bobsky was not going to be the replacement for Device. Like, it never was based on stuff I'd heard. I'd heard they were already looking for someone else before Device left, and it wasn't going to be Bobsky, put it that way. Essetag can't replace him. By the way, Bobsky also, role-wise, can't replace Device. Essetag, realistically, listen, I saw him up in Cloud9. He can't replace Device. That's absolutely ridiculous. He's more of a Zipnix replacement in anything, which is why it made sense when he was a Zipnix replacement and they won Pro League without him, without Zipnix. Then you consider, quite frankly, nobody in Denmark can replace Device. That's why he's the most irreplaceable player. The only player with even like the basic skill set that's close is A-Core. And quite frankly, Mousesports is the sort of level A-Core should be on. He hasn't yet proven that he can actually be a Device, etc. He's more like Device in the very, very early days. And even then, quite frankly, Device was a better player relative to his peers. Device could be a top 10 player if you go back even to, I'm going to say, like 2014. And the potential was always there. Now, I think, quite frankly, this makes Astralis a borderline top 10 going forwards. I don't think they're going to be better than a top 10 team. I don't even know if they're a top 10 team, boys. Device was even carrying him at times last year when this lineup would have its bad games, etc. He was pivotal at the majors, hence the MVPs. And who was the other guy in your starting lineup who won an MVP at a major? It's Magisk, and he's arguably in career worst form and is the player most obvious to cut from the team, arguably. Now, should NiP have signed him? This part's going to be pretty quick, isn't it? Of course. Even at this big buyout price, which is not even exorbitant for the player in question. Just absolutely, it's a big number. By the way, based on what I've heard, it's less than twice what Astralis wanted for Bobsky, even in his shit form recently, where he's just destroyed his game entirely. Now, not only is this a player way above the level NiP's at, and has been for many years, but even the expectations of who you could get, like the story supposedly told by the CEO of NiP is, it wasn't even them who were trying to make the deal happen. It's just like Astralis and Device just reached out to them, like, you want to make this deal happen? This probably wasn't even in their wildest dreams, but I tell you what, it's almost the perfect star piece. If you're NiP, you were looking for a dominant star player and an AWPer, right? He's a dominant AWPer and star player, most MVPs in history. He's going to be playing for a tactical coach in Thresh, like he played for a tactical coach in Zonic. The only thing, in my opinion, they needed more than a star, and even then it's debatable because they hadn't yet got the stars that then necessitate this player, was a great in-game leader. Because quite frankly, you don't really tend to win or have long periods of dominance without a great in-game leader, just as you need a great star. I think the Nork side of it really sucks. I do think he was a player who was gradually improving. In fact, I think arguably Pro League was maybe his best tournament ever. He did look like the star player or the key player when they were a very good team. He was arguably in career best form. He's not Device, let's be real. But it's just unfortunate for him that the circumstances came along this way and they didn't want to make him just a rifler and keep the both of them in the team. The in-game leader angle is still the issue if you NiP, in my opinion. Like, when they get back to LAN, I don't think this is a top 5 side in terms of talent. I think Device can make them a top 10 team. Like, I think he could make NiP better than Astralis is without him. But even then, if you want to go for more than just being a top 10 team, I think it's probably going to depend on your future signings, right? Maybe this opens the door for more Danes to come at some point if they can speak good enough Swedish. Imagine one day if he can bring across a Valde, a Blame F, a Tesses, etc. By the way, these are all players that will want to play with someone like a Device. It's not like when I was trying to get the Flashpoint teams to sign big name players, but they haven't got anyone there, and their team was never great. It doesn't matter where NiP's at. As long as they have the money, if you have Device, he's in really good form, and he tells you, look, this is the place to come, threat's great, these guys are good, they've got a good mentality. There's people are going to come who would never have considered joining a team like NiP, and especially if they were just a Swedish team. Now, on Device's side, no, he shouldn't have left Astralis competitively, and especially not for NiP as a team. Like, ignoring org shit outside of the server for Astralis, they still had the pieces to win majors and to win more in Astralis, in my opinion, and still be great and still allow Device the platform to be arguably the greatest player in the world, the one who wins the most MVPs. Like, they were a top team at the end of last year. People are acting like they were, it's like been like a year since they were good. It was only a few months ago. They were an absolutely fantastic team. And most people acknowledge a lot of their pieces are the greatest of all time across the board. So how do you ever split that up? How do you leave that in that case? Competitively, I'm talking about, in terms of winning in the game. Now, obviously, we can't know the attitudes of the players internally over the last year or two. I can only know the things I heard or things maybe some of them might have told me. I do suspect, though, quite frankly, that some of them don't care as much about winning as when we were on LAN and when they hadn't proven themselves, when they were in the midst of that incredible era. I think some of them now do it as a job and they want to win for their own little reasons, like, I want to beat this guy, or we want to win this tournament, or wow, these underdogs are coming up. But quite frankly, knowing some of the things I know about potential transfers that could have happened in and out of the team over the last year, I think they treated it more like a job, getting paid, getting through this period, and the whole time, a bunch of them were jockeying for position and trying to figure out what they were going to do next and who was going to sign them for big money next, or which big team might be their exit, or maybe they retire. I think these were some of the things going on in the team. So, okay, Benham, we can't entirely know that, especially not publicly. We'll leave a little bit of room that potentially was the case. It wasn't the same as... It's not like he just left at the end of 2019 where there were monsters on LAN still. You're like, why the hell are you leaving this team? It's just the context was we never got back to LANs properly, so we only saw that whack little early part in 2020, which, listen, I would have said that it's possible to come back from that. That wasn't the end of the world. We hadn't had enough tournaments. They were still a top team at Kovacevicd, for fuck's sake. They just lost to a monstrous Na'Vi performance with no motherfucking crowd, so even knows what happens if you replay that with a normal setup. Now then, competitively, on the surface, like I alluded to, it's a terrible move. It's a much worse team, even, by the way, with some of the recent form drop-off of Astralis, which says it all, right? Not... He himself, and this is my problem, he isn't a game breaker in the same way that Simple and Zebu are. Now, I do think there's still a little bit of potential where if you put him in a worse team and he really commits himself to it, he can get close to that. The problem is Simple... Zewu, maybe Nico at his prime, these ones are game breakers because they're just impossible players. Like, they aren't mortal almost. So what they can do to the game, even with lesser names, no one can be expected to do that, and nobody should be. Even Device, by the way. He shouldn't be expected to now make this team like top 5 in the world, top 3 in the world. That's asking too much. I mean, we've even seen some of those names couldn't do it when they didn't have the pieces around them. One of my issues is, not only is it a worse team, but where's his help? He's got 0 legendary players with him. He has got 0 players that have meaningful major accomplishments, quite frankly. So he needs help, and what are the odds all of them make it? It's not very high. A bunch of them probably don't make it, or are never that much better than they are now, or just 1 or 2 do, or the core makes it. So you're already looking at probably roster moves before this team ever gets to where he sounds from his talk like he wants them to be. Now, I will say, and maybe I'll get to that later, he's also got no great in-game leader, as I've alluded to. Now, I do think that is a key to winning in this game. You need a great start, great in-game leader, and then what you do with the rest of the team depends on what flavour and preference on style of team you want. Now, I will say, this is a guy who played with Carrigan, Glaive, so I actually wonder if he's taken for granted the role of an in-game leader. Hampus is not on that level, mate. Let's be real. And I don't suspect he's ever going to be, even though I wouldn't claim to know in depth how he thinks about the game. It's just those are the 2 greatest in-game leaders to ever play CSGO as far as I'm concerned. Now, the best piece on the team, and an attractive piece potentially for your Device, is the coach threat, of course. A really good coach. If anything, playing for a team or working with a team, I think far below the level that he actually should be at. I get it, he wants to work with Swedes, etc. So I will say, Coach can't talk when you're on land very much, so a lot of what actually he might even have been doing in NiP now might go away, and the fact that I suspect sometimes he like half shot calls, that's a bit alarming to me, that they're going to go offline, get worse in that sense, and he doesn't have a great in-game leader behind him, and now maybe some of the genius shit Device is doing doesn't sync up with the team that he's playing in. There's also no clear-cut second star in NiP right now, because arguably Nork was the player you hoped would be their best player, and he's been replaced by Device, and Plopsky was the other kind of star name, because he was more of like an entry and just like a skilled player for that position, and it was never a monster the last few years. So for my money, Plopsky didn't do that much on LAN yet, and is not really that battle-tested, so you're hard-pressed to say he's got any good fagging power around him as well. Then add in, he's going to have to speak Swedish instead of Danish. Right, first of all, he can speak it. Like, as far as I know, Danes learn Swedish in school. I think most of the Nordic countries do. There are similarities between Danish and Swedish, and he has had a Swedish girlfriend for many years now, as far as I know. I don't actually know the current status of that relationship, but he definitely did for a number of years. The issue, in fact, I think he had a couple of Swedish girlfriends, actually. The issue is the speed and the minor hiccups you could have speaking in a second language. It's like Janko said about Nico when I was asking him about him being an in-game leader, where he actually said a thing he thought was very positive about Nico, was that he could very quickly communicate what his call was. And this is the point. He said sometimes the right call becomes the wrong call if it's just like slightly too long to communicate it. So that's one of the things I worry about with someone like Device, a pivotal piece meshing with the team with that individual style he has with more mobility on the map and then working with a tactical style. He's not playing just in a loose system right now. He's not playing in the old Carrigan style where he's somewhat turned loose to just AWP however he wanted and just interact with the team when it made sense. I think actually, you look at it, it's interesting. He's now kind of put himself in the Nico position, where I always say Nico gets a little bit of extra leeway with me in terms of results because he doesn't play in a team where he speaks his first language and has people from his culture around him. Listen, Danish to Swedish isn't that crazy in terms of the culture, but in terms of the actual language aspect, that certainly is an issue. The Device is now going to be speaking a second language, which in this case, would that even be a second language? I suspect, if I had to guess, that he might be better at English personally, but I'm sure with like similarities, especially in written Swedish, I would guess he's probably just as good. I guess he's very good. He's probably as good as Nico as in English, if I had to guess. Now, an interesting detail is he's going to have to be amazing individually to win in this team. So, in line with what Yachi was saying in his press conference about how he'd never been the best player because he's one of those people who just gets brainwashed like, oh, the Serbian guy told me I wasn't the best, so I wasn't the best. Like, you can believe it if you want, mate, it's up to you, but okay. So he's never been the best player in a year, right? So okay, if that's something he's going for, this is a team where you could get it done in as much as if you can make this team win and come anywhere close to majors and you're going to be probably good immediately. You're going to jump even higher in that greatest of all time conversation. Like, I personally don't see that as his game, especially in an era where you have Simple and Zebu and these monster players, and quite frankly Nico still hasn't really gotten into the right team to make use of his skills. But you know what, bearing in mind people generally in sports and esports just care about rings, I could see it winning a lot of people over if you win any more majors, titles, MVPs, etc. I mean, the whole Brady argument is basically resting on that exact principle in the NFL, no matter what the eye test tells you about other players. People will say, of course, that he has nothing left to prove, Thorin. He's already won the majors MVP. Well, yeah, because they're losers who never did any of that stuff. So to them, to do it once would be incredible. They don't understand if you're as great as Device is, you want to win every major you can in your career, I would hope. That's, for me, what the greatest player of all time thinks when he plays the game. This is why I did that whole The Message thing for Blast, where I said, no, you haven't proven it all by winning one major. Win 2 majors, 3 majors, set the record. Put the record so far out of reach, no one can ever beat your record, and you are considered the greatest to ever play. But okay, he said that whole thing about wanting to go because the best player and all the rest of it. Certainly, this is a harder path to do it, but okay. Now, one of my problems in this sense is, I mean, you could also just be the GOAT by winning more majors, titles, and MVPs in Astralis. So I think it would be easier to do it there, even if, yes, the eye test means some people might never give you your due. But you know what? If you win all the majors and you deny Simple as Ewu any majors, yeah, they're going to have a hard time making the arguments since so many people go for resume. I don't, but that's the way a lot of people think in this game. Now, I also think this wasn't the right move to make, because as much as I disagree with leaving Astralis, because of some of the org shit, I can understand why you might want to leave Astralis, but to go to this team, I mean, I know we're going to get to a reason he claims later, but there's other teams you can go to. I think it'd be much better. Like, I know there's not that much money to be spent right now. Believe me, I know that after my whole Flashpoint fucking fiasco. But even so, like, if you want to join a Swedish team and speak Swedish, I'd rather see you playing Fnatic than fucking NiP, mate. Like, imagine if The rumour is JW's leaving. He's not the AWPer anymore. Imagine they put Device in as the AWPer. Right, so you've got Golden, who's shown some real potential to maybe be a great in-game leader one day, if not already a very good in-game leader. You've got Crims, who is the other great player you'd have in your team. He's another legendary name and still has some skills. Accomplished names in some of these players. And then, who's the other player? Brolan, enormous potential, already one of the best players in the world. Got it all nailed down, looking great for years to come, and he's already signed a big contract. To me, Fnac's the team you go to if you want to play with Swedes, mate. That's a team that's ready built to maybe make you number one now. Or how about this? If you're going to not speak Danish, why not go to FaZe Clan? Why don't you reunite with Carrigan? One of the greatest in-game leaders of all time. I'd like to go from fucking Carrigan to Glaive back to Carrigan. And that's how you get the greatest career resume to ever play any version of CS, by the way. You also could replace Brokey as an AWPer. Hasn't had that many chances on land to be an elite level AWPer. They have mad talent on their team in Cold Zero and Twist. You have some really skilled players around you. And nobody's fucking with your role if you join that team. I mean, oh lordy, would that be an exciting lineup if that was the move that we'd seen announced, right? Whether they have the money or not. Then let's just be real. It's fucking ninjas in pyjamas. It's NiP. Since the beginning of the game, even when they were the most dominant team imaginable, they've been a shady org who've done all sorts of fucked up shit, allegedly, as Rich Lewis's reporting has shown you. Even when they've changed ownership, the shady shit just continued on and on and on. I gotta say this right now. Device might be a truly great player, he is, but he has got ass taste in esports orgs. He went from TSM, what a moron owner they have in Reginald, to Astralis, who've done all sorts of shady shit and lied repeatedly themselves, now to NiP, the old check stealers, nothing in PayPal themselves. What the fuck? I mean, this guy must just be sad he was born too late in life to work with Enron and fucking Bernie Madoff. Holy moly, does this guy not care at all about the ethics and the morals of the people he works with? Just all about that chicken scratch here, baby. Give me a break. Now, in terms of reasons to join NiP, let's go with the one he kind of nailed first and everyone's been focusing on, which is the idea that he lives in Stockholm, Sweden, with his girlfriend. I don't even know if that's the case, but he certainly lives in Stockholm, Sweden. So, of course, he would want to stay there and it's less travel. Now, listen, maybe this is more of an Astralis-specific complaint because they always used to brag within their org. We play in the org and we have all these boot camps. You have to come in for these sessions and do the training in this way. So if you're having to travel repeatedly between Stockholm and Copenhagen, yeah, I get it. That's going to be a hassle, right? It's not the same as some of the teams who live at home and then they only get together for the event itself. So maybe more Astralis-specific, like I say. A concept people will overlook, by the way, is this. I'm not surprised he doesn't want to go there and do that anymore. One of the things people always, in my opinion, really misapplied about Astralis was the idea you could just take their blueprint and apply it over here and it would work for any team. It's the reason why people have been trying to catch up to Koreans in games for years, because they just looked at what the Koreans did and went, right, so they burn themselves out to a crisp and they have insane work ethic. Let's just do all that. It's like, that won't work for you. You aren't built like that. You aren't going to accept that. So similarly, you can get people to do all the extras, like I said to MSL in that counterpoints, when they're already the best and they're primed to be the best and they can win tournaments every single fucking week if they do what you ask them. But you know what? If they're not winning anymore, or things aren't great, or they've already had their fill of winning, you're not going to get them to do that. They're going to push back against that, as I've heard some of the players did repeatedly in this org. Hence the whole thing that eventually you will burn out. And by the way, the Astralis org knows fuck all about preventing player burnout. I'd argue they're the CSGO org that forced the most player burnout, in part also due to the success of the team, obviously, since if they come in last place, they wouldn't have been as burned out, would they? So I'll just reference that I saw that there was a comment by Mr. Thid of Astralis where he said, we could have insisted on keeping Nikolai until his contract expires in December, but when someone who has served the team the way he has, doesn't he make fucking sense, this comment, whatever, we will do our utmost to find a solution that satisfies both parties. Didn't work, of course, when people like Glaive wanted to just have a fucking break after accomplishing everything imaginable for your team. No, he had to come with the doctor's note and then you were basically actually legally required to give him that time, or he could have probably involved you in a lawsuit. So again, you guys can choose to believe liars, some of you do. I'm going to say not, especially because of some of the things I know. Now, with all that said, let's be real. If we go back to a real land schedule, I think it's a bit whack to be like, I can't travel to the next door country so often. Like, mate, a normal travel schedule is like you go to China, then you go to Sweden, then you go to fucking France, then you go to North America, then you go to South America, then you go back to it. Like, mate, it's going to get a lot, or maybe you go to fucking the Middle East if it's a blast or something. Like, you have no idea how bad that's going to be. So, I don't know. I feel like that one's pushing it out a little bit. Like, if you're going to do all that, you couldn't do that. Now, I will say, A point people keep forgetting about Device. It shows what an incredible player he's been. That with all that success, people just put this in the background. This should be the main story along with the success, which is those health issues he has, the potentially career-ending medical condition he has that just wrecks him from his stomach base or intestines or whatever, digestive system. Right? I get from that, as he said in the past in 2019, why he wouldn't want to travel as much. That's more than fair. I just question this. In 10 years from now, when your career is done, if your Device... maybe you do look back and go, maybe I could have done one more year of travelling to Copenhagen if it had meant I could have won the more major stuff. There's a lot of great players. It's only when they can no longer go back to being a player they realise, I wish I'd gotten absolutely everything out there. I wish I'd just squeezed the fucking lemon till all the juice came out. In Device's case, it would be rather bitter juice from a fucking lemon, wouldn't it? Be a bit tart. So okay, but enough about Device. I also think it's worth pointing out, by the way, let's just put it out there, please stop just taking what players say or teams say at face value and go, no, it was because of this, because they said so. Imagine how court would work if you just instantly said, right, you dismiss all the evidence and what all our expert witnesses and what the prosecution's saying. Look, they said themselves they were innocent and they didn't do it, so they must go innocent. Now, just stop doing that, please, guys. You can take what they say and put a percentage on it or think, does it make sense, or listen to it, certainly. It's like that old thing, trust but verify, right? So, let's look at some other reasons, because I don't personally think that's the main reason. I think it's certainly a nice reason along with some of the others. Here's one, like he's implied in that press conference. Maybe he wants to reinvent himself or reinvigorate himself. I don't think, quite frankly, Device was the one with motivation issues. He's one of the most dedicated and consistent players in history. I think those factors probably go hand in hand, by the way. I also think there's a factor where, even though he's not really old in real life, in the game he's played for many years. So, you know, if you got an old dog, people might know this concept, and you get a young dog, a puppy with it, often the puppy's energy and its playfulness brings out a bit more life and vitality out of the old dog. So maybe he sees it as that sort of situation. This will get me locked back in for another 5 years in the game or 3 years and really going hard, because he gets to join up with a bunch of young Swedes hungry to learn. We've got a coach who can mould them. Maybe he sees. It's not a terrible concept, by the way. Especially coming out of the nightmare marriage breakup type scenario in Astralis for the last year. Maybe he looks and says, this reminds me of the core I was in Copenhagen Wolves in Dignitas before we broke through and were champions. And we were looking for the right coach and we were working with the pieces and seeing who was going to develop and getting over our issues. Maybe he looks at the team and goes, I can be the missing piece now like I couldn't be for my own team back then. By the way, if he wants to give an example of like LeBron James, what LeBron James is doing in his career, because he implied it's like LeBron James going to the Lakers. Like, don't know if you follow the NBA Device. I know it's just an analogy. It's not a terrible analogy. But by the way, he wasn't on the team winning the NBA. He was in the finals, and then he went to the Lakers. Spoiler, I'd look into what happened the first year, mate. It wasn't great. And you know why it wasn't great? He didn't have a great player with him in Anthony Davis. Once he got that, then he was able to win, and even then, under the bizarre circumstances we've been in now. So, I guess it's just a metaphor, but even then, I'd say within your metaphor, I'd use that to draw a counter metaphor. Like, where's your Anthony Davis in this team? And you were basically, in this analogy, it's like you were on the Warriors team and you left the Warriors to go to fucking Lakers. Not you left the Cavaliers to go to the Lakers. Like, it doesn't quite work for me entirely, but I get it's just on one end. Now, listen, with the Astralis org being idiots, the whole thing of how they mistreated them in terms of burning them out, negotiations constantly, fuckery behind the scenes and bringing in shitter players to be like, look, we can replace you and have someone else. Being willing to sell the whole team without the team's permission or agreement, allegedly, from what I heard. The fact that Zipniks could already have been gone. I basically heard if someone else accepts the price that Zipniks wants as his salary, he's gone. If someone else agrees to the price Astralis wants, the entire team's sold, or there's some sort of a lawsuit. So if you know some of the shit that's been going on with that team, yeah, I get it. You know what? This team, even though it had the same players, it probably wasn't going to be the same as the one that won, right? Too much had gone, too much water under the bridge. They've also played for so many years. It's unrealistic to actually expect them to ever be that great again. It was almost impossible they did it the first time and came back that many times. So I get it. All makes a lot of sense with what's happened to everyone. I personally also, just throw this out there, in light of some of the shit going on with the Astralis org, I suspect they wouldn't get the same salaries if they re-signed with the org. So even money-wise, it might have been a better deal. Let's get to that reason, right? Because you have to consider it as a reason. I think it's kind of telling that a lot of people, the first things that they heard about the team, NiP, signing Device, was like, he wants to live in Sweden, in Stockholm, and they're signing him for this much money. It's like, wait a minute, why are those the first reasons? Like, wouldn't the reasons be like, well, I want to join these teammates or this specific org, or I want to work with Threat, or I want to reinvent myself as a like, that's what was a bit suspicious to me, that those are the first reasons that everyone was sort of hearing. It wasn't like heavily emphasized on that part. So I suspect he got mega paid. And by the way, he deserves it. He's one of the greatest players ever, still in his prime. If anyone deserves an enormous salary, arguably the best in the game, I would say it's him, right? If you think about those Henry G comments that he made on By the Numbers, I think it was last year, he implied Astralis players got paid the most in the world. So certainly you were getting paid already, but if the org was having all a shit show behind the scenes and weren't going to put the right players out, maybe you go to another org and get mega paid. In this case, maybe they're willing to overpay because you're so much better than the other players and they would never normally have a crack at you. By the way, there's another reason why if you NiP, you sign him. Because imagine being the guy who goes, I could have signed Device once. What do you do instead? Just kept an org. It's like, yeah, see you, dickhead. You can go fucking sleep this buzz off. I don't think it worked for you in esports. So yeah, you have to do it if you NiP, let's be real. I'd also say, by the way, if it is just, or if money is a primary motivator, I think it'd be very sad in light of the fact he's not joining a top competitive team. Like, a lot of people might think, get the bag, because people have no, like, aspirations, ideals. People don't know what it's like to live a moral life or to aspire to greatness. They just think, get more fucking fiat units so that I can get more toys and bells and whistles in life. Like, mate, there's a lot more to life than that. As I always say, the money will be gone one day, and all that will remain is your legacy of what you did in terms of the things you accomplished. So if you go to a team that's lesser for the money, you get that's a short-term benefit. In the long run, it will cost you. It'll cost you in terms of your legacy. Now, in terms of the historical context of this, it's the biggest move in CSGO history. Even when new teams have been formed, teams are split in half, I think this is crazy because this is a contender for the greatest player of all time, leaving the greatest team of all time, from the greatest slump of all, from the greatest core of all time, we've been together many years, after a small slump when we're not even on LAN, and quite frankly, they'd come back from, I would argue, bigger slumps twice already. And you go into a team which is a worse team, historically a worse team, except at the very beginning of the game, without key pieces that you'll need to win. So you know what, if you want to use the LeBron career analogy device, this is more like LeBron when he left the Heat. If the Heat had won the championship, or just lost like to the Spurs, and quite frankly, I think the only reason he left the Heat was because of Dwayne Wade's injury status and his age, and he thought he wouldn't get the players again. Is that what Device thought about Astralis? If so, let's hope he goes on record one day and says in an interview. He hasn't really implied it so far, has he? It's also kind of funny that Device was the guy going out last year on HLTV Confirmed, being the one selling the vision that everything was going to be great, and he hoped that the original 5 would be the ones that played at a major, etc. Shows how much his word's worth. I already knew at the time there was a potential they're all gone from Astralis, hence why we'll get to the drama later. I also think it's just one of the weirdest moves ever due to the destination. This, in my opinion, will cause an enormous change of power in terms of who's good, who's not, obviously in case of Astralis, etc. Like, late 2019, it looked like nobody could replace Astralis as the greatest team ever. Like, someone else could have taken them off number 1, or maybe someone could beat them on the right day. But they had the chance to be number 1 again, they had the chance to extend their record. Quite frankly, it's going to be hard for anyone to ever even match what they've already done. So, let's be real, this is the end of the Astralis dynasty for good. The dynasty already wasn't winning that much, except for the online titles, because we haven't been on LAN for a long time. But, I mean, how does it continue after this? This is the player that you needed. I don't, quite frankly, even see a rebuild being particularly possible in the context of what made the team great in the first place. Like, where is the next Device or Stod that you're going to put in there to win you the tournament? They haven't been able to get Valde, they haven't been able to get Config, they haven't been able to get Carrick. They don't have any of these names. I mean, you wouldn't have Carrick as a star, but my point is the big name free agents or players out there from Denmark, they're not getting them anywhere. Now, in terms of his individual career, one thing that we should again reiterate is not only did he win all that shit and play fantastically, but the guy had this illness. So, bear in mind, I wouldn't even have blamed him if he had to retire and just say, you know what, I already fought through it that many times. Because, by the way, his illness came when I think it was just before they became the greatest team ever. So all those years of choking and giving his best and being an amazing player, then he gets like a career-threatening injury. He doesn't go, right, I retire, or win alone, go, right, I retire now. He keeps playing. And remember, this is an injury which is triggered by stress. What's more stressful than being a fucking AWPer for the best team in the world, on LAN in the biggest, closest matches ever? You can't ask for more than that. So I think it's heroic he even fought through that and kept playing with that illness, just as when Get Right was doing it in NIP back in the day. So I'm personally grateful he even continues playing. I wouldn't necessarily blame him if he just said, you know what, now that I can't win anymore, I'm probably not going to win the short term, I'm out. I'm just going now. Or I'll go to an even worse team for a nice salary and just take a retirement check. Like, I can't have the stress anymore. I wouldn't have blamed him, so I'm actually very glad he continues playing as an individual for the historical context. Now let's get to the drama. Y'all want some fun? Y'all want to have some fun with this? Okay, let's do it. So, last year, around the time when Astralis had lost Glaive and Xyp9x, Glaive had the medical note, so he was able to go on leave, and then Xyp9x was able to follow suit and take time off. I mean, I heard, Richard reported something similar, I believe, that like he basically demanded that he got out at that point in time, they had no choice. So then they needed 2 players, didn't they? So in the short term, even though they'd signed Esatag, he couldn't join until his contract ended Heroic, so they brought in Yugi, a mega washed up guy, and then they brought in Snappy, who obviously shouldn't be on a team like that, but okay, he's an IGL, he was available, I mean, there's circumstances where he should have been on the Tiger team, but whatever. The Heroic CEO was a fucking idiot at the time, so he allowed the team to have him. Whatever. We'll put that to one side. But here's the issue, right? During this time period, because they basically became Blastralis again, like they were just a fucking shit team, now they don't even have 2 of their key pieces, and their results online were ass. Like, they didn't even get out of the fucking Blast Showdown that time around. I mean, I know they didn't this time, but it was against much better opposition this time. Around then, like, he was actually depressed in some of the teams they were losing to. So I just made a banter, right? Because classically, Carrigan has beaten a lot of his former teams, including Astralis, more times than they've beaten him. I made a banter about that on Twitter. I just said, see, don't worry, Device. I know there's a deleted tweet later on, but we've got these things called receipts. Might want to look into that. So, okay, I've even kept the old ones so you can see my old profile, pick here, etc. I said, Carrigan over Astralis. Same old. Hashtag Blast Premier. You notice I don't say anything about Device. I don't insult him openly. I just say Carrigan is better than Astralis. Same old. It's banter, right? Device comes in. We'll talk in a minute about our relationship. You'll just see this right now. Publicly just replies to my tweet. You notice I haven't tagged him there. I haven't replied to him. I'm not replying in a tweet to him. I'm just tweeting on my fucking Twitter account. The biggest crime of all time. I know that to morons. You seem to think sending abuse directly to people is cool. But for me to just give my opinion or a joke on my Twitter without tagging anyone, that's evil because you're mentally ill. But okay. Then Device replies. He says, take every opportunity to slam us, but please don't pat our shoulder when we are back. Thanks. To which I replied, lol, okay, salty boy. Because I remember just thinking, the fuck is this? Especially in light of who this person is and who he knows me. But okay, then he comes back with another one. And I did the tweet after this. The chronological order is being maintained here. Because he did that reply, I just tweeted again on my timeline without tagging him. He doesn't have to do anything to do with this. I say, imagine how narcissistic you have to be to want praise and no criticism or memes when you lose and look absolutely terrible doing it. Fuck out of here. Because, by the way, he didn't even look good in the Astralis that was getting banged on that. It was not like he was hard carrying like a Simplora and Eco, etc. Then he comes in, again, has to reply to my Twitter account. Remember, I'm so irrelevant, people just have to keep replying to me on Twitter. And he goes, nothing narcissistic about it. At me if you have a problem instead. By the way, I don't know why you're trying to appeal to 14-year-old kids who think you have to at people, but I personally think it's a bit obnoxious to at people when they haven't sort of gotten involved with you first. But okay, that's just the way you do things, Device. Then he says, thing is, everyone understands why we are losing. They don't, by the way. There was things behind the scenes happening right at this moment that Device himself probably was even privy to, but I suspect maybe not. That actually means that wasn't necessarily the only reason they were losing. But okay, you like to lie and be disingenuous to the public, Device. Keep going, mate. You're doing a good job. Shouldn't that be that tough for an esports historian to figure out, right? By the way, he's implying, basically, maybe I'm not an esports historian there because I can't figure out why they're bad. They always love to go after your integrity and credibility. Remember, I've had the audacity of calling him a narcissist because he refused to let people meme about his team being shit at a time that they're shit, and they even themselves will say, let's set expectations low. Like, we shouldn't expect a lot from this team because these players come in. And at the same time lying, 7 man, 10 man, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 10, not 20 players, not 30 players, all major winners, IGLs, in-game leaders, and all the roles combined. Like, I see why he likes LeBron. I see where he takes his fucking cue from with the org he's just been a part of. So, okay, he comes to that and he goes, what is annoying is that you are just riding a wave and staying relevant by being edgy, clown face. So he's also implying, by the way, I'm only relevant, or I'm staying relevant, by doing this tweet, Carrigan over Astralis, or calling him narcissistic. Not from all the work I'm doing, from the fact I win fucking awards, I'm on all these talk shows all the time. I even make this video you're watching right now, which will be relevant in the community. I'm so relevant he has to reply to me twice on Twitter and then make further tweets about it. But no, let's ensure that when I make a light-hearted jab at someone I actually considered, like, I wouldn't say a friend, but an acquaintance, that when they come back at me and say, like, I have to at them, no, you're not in control of my Twitter account, Everyone understands why we're losing. Shouldn't be that hard for you to figure it out. So I'm also an idiot, apparently. And, you know, I'm only basically relevant by being edgy with a tweet about him. But, by the way, he's essentially implying I'm only relevant because I vaguely tweet about something that could be interpreted as being sort of about him. Sounds like he's a bit of a narcissist or something, like the whole world revolves around him, right? So anyway, I replied to him. I said, I don't need to at you, loser. By the way, he just lost a game. By definition, he is literally a loser in this moment. He's also been a loser in terms of his fucking attitude and the way he's behaving. I don't have to fucking at this guy. I can do whatever the fuck I want on my Twitter account. Then I said what is a generic insult that people went so... Because y'all have no ammunition to get me. You have to make up nonsense and purposely misinterpret. I said, go call your girlfriend if you want to rage out about losing in the game. People were going, oh, you brought his family into it. Oh, I'd never do that. Wow, I can't believe you said that about his girlfriend. What? That if he's angry from losing the game, maybe he should go and call her instead of tweeting me on Twitter. You think it's... Even if I didn't know if he had a girlfriend, that would be a perfectly generic statement to make. I made no comment about his girlfriend at the time, Amelia Holt. I never made any aspersions about her. What I'm telling him is, fuck off telling me on Twitter about, well, reasons you lose. If you want to rage about it, mate, go fucking call your girlfriend. Talk to her. You're in a relationship with her. She supports you. She probably gives a fuck. I sure as hell don't about you crying about little fucking jokes. So, okay, don't worry. Here's the deleted tweet. Then he comes in. After I said that, oh, don't worry, he deleted it pretty quick. He goes... Oh, dear Lord, and you are 37 years old? I can't. Crying face emoji. Now we've even brought in my age. Devices simultaneously hit all the big ones to win fucking Thorin delusion syndrome. He's won the fucking bingo, boys. Ding, 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 ding. Device is the winner. And there we go. He's won Thorin derangement syndrome. He's the one, the bingo winner. He hit it. Amazing fucking job. So, okay. Let's get into this, because this isn't like just any player doing this, by the way. There's lots of other players who could do very similar things, and I would react very differently. Because here's what you need to know, basically. When he's making these tweets, the context is I already know his whole team could have been sold to another big org already at that point in time. It's being talked about and negotiated potentially. I even said on By the Numbers many times around this summer that if I had a gun to my head and I had to bet... that the original 5, the ones that won the 3 majors in a row, never get to another major. I said that as a bet if I had to bet. Who was right, by the way? Oh, I was. Not Device, not Astralis, not any of you in the fucking community or on shit podcasts that know nothing about the space and just flap your enormous fucking gums. You know fuck all about this space, son. That's why y'all never had any of those reports. So, okay, what was the outcome of Device making these tweets, by the way? When he's replying to my tweets, rudely, and criticising everything about me. Do you think it cost him anything? Do you think he got fined in his career or punished or told shut up, etc.? I'll tell you what the outcome was. It caused so much pressure to be put on blast from the Astralis org that they basically came to me and asked me not to tweet about Astralis while I worked for them. And I told them, yeah, but I'm working like a whole nother event after this week. Like, I'm not just going to wait like a month to tweet. So I just straight up told them, you know what? In that case, I decline to work for you any longer. And I told them, that's okay, we can break the contract right now. I don't need to work for you anymore. I won't work the spring finals, which I'd agreed to work the entire spring season. And if it's the case that I can't be myself, I have to compromise what I say. By the way, in this case, I'm joking. And otherwise, what am I saying about Astralis? I'm criticising things I verifiably know about shady shit they're doing and lies they're telling. But Blast the Org wants me to not do that because Astralis will be upset. And Astralis want me to not do that because they're scumfucks. And Device... he just happens to get mixed up and it doesn't even be the tip of the spear, causing me to lose money potentially, right? Because in the future, if things go well in the spring season, they will love me at Blast. I'm going to be doing the fall season after that, right? I can tell you right now, the money I lost from not working the rest of the year for Blast is like multiple years of what my dad used to make as his primary income. So to Device, that might mean fuck all, right? Why would he care, right? After all, who am I to Device? Nobody, right? Just a fucking guy who's only relevant for doing edgy tweets. Clown face, right? Let me get into this a little bit. Because actually Device is a player I consider someone I had a relationship with. I won't go as far as to overtly say I was like his mentor. He definitely never came to me and asked me to be that. I never said, oh, I'm going to do this. But he's someone where I would say, as an acquaintance, I had something of akin to that relationship with. This is someone where, whenever he had his big failures, before he started winning with Astralis, I would send him messages, keep his head up, etc. Put in some nice comments, etc. Then he's someone where, when he would win championships, etc., I would say him stuff, oh, it's so great what you've done in your career, I'm proud of what you've done, you've overcome so much, the way you're playing through your illness, etc. Basically, encouragement, trying to be a friend, trying to be a shoulder to cry on at times, trying to get them to keep their heads up. I've actually done it to many players. I've even done it to cunts like fucking Nico, believe it or not. They just obviously, again, shameless cunts, so they never bother to ever actually reciprocate. Well, here's the interesting thing. Unlike other people, like Elige and some others, who actually have had a similar relationship with him, but have actually reciprocated in some way on their end. Device would say the odd comment within the DM that was like a nice thing, but put it this way, he never did shit for me. Aside from the ident at the beginning of this video, he never did a talk show of mine. He did one many, many years ago, in I think 2014, that was broken somehow, never got released. Aside from that, he never did an interview, never complimented me publicly, never said anything. Like, basically, all he ever did was that. He never did anything. Wasn't even actually much of a friend privately, by the way. Now he flames me openly in response to tweets that weren't attacking him. Don't have him included. I'm not replying to his things. And I've never attacked him publicly in his entire career, beyond making jokes. Now here's the thing. Here's the difference between Device and me. I'll never lie about someone's skills, their job, their accomplishments. I'll make jokes, but I'll never lie. Unlike everyone else in esports, including Device, I give people their due. What great things they accomplish, they get to have accomplished that. I don't go about because I don't like him and what he did to me now. I'll just lie and say, you know, he was just carried in all those majors. You know what? He's only relevant now because he got signed by NiP. He was just a fucking shady ass org. And he's probably secretly kept it. I don't do any of that because I'm not like Device and those others. And I won't let them define who I am as a person. So, was he right? Was he right that that was the case? Remember what he said there? Don't pat him on the back when we're back. Now, let's just think. If you really think back meant win a few online tournaments at the end of the year, I think that's an incredibly disingenuous and uncharitable reading of that. Realistically, this is a guy who's just won 3 majors in a row and had an era. And then even like almost a mini era right after that. To be back means winning majors, being the far and away #1 team, being back on LAN, having championships and being the dominant force. That's when he doesn't want me to come. He's even alluding to it in his comments, guys, and privately give him the pat on the back and say you did a great job, or even tweet, oh, amazing accomplishment, winning the MVP or whatever. Like, he's saying not to do that. Well, here's the thing, Device. I knew you probably wouldn't be back. So, did you come back? Did I miss him? Did we go to LAN? No, you never played another LAN. You never won another LAN. We've never had another LAN. There never was another major. So much for your big words. You were just a fucking kid raging about losing an online game after all the success in your career, where you're playing with Yugi and Snappy, players who have no business being in the server with you, but you're going to have to pretend that they deserve to be there. All because of your org, the one I'm trying to help get fucking put away so you can get to a better org and team, and their bullshit, while they're trying to sell you, homie, and you don't even know about it, supposedly. Ridiculous, isn't it? Anyway, the move sucks. This video was kindly supported by Eddie, Lager15, Pronogo, Shenlong, Zachary Carter, Alexander Rao, Andreas Kroknes, Animosity, Dean Tanglis, ErikHillestad, Hades, Jdubs, Jensen Goh, Kovacevicd, Tobias Bernasconi, Zoomba, Zyrathenia, and as always, special thanks to my dude, Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest? Would you like to ask a question in one of those monthly AMA videos I do? Do you want teasers on who the upcoming guests are? Or maybe you want to take part in a discussion about esports with moi? Well, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.